Will members of the clergy, will religious leaders be able to defeat Donald Trump's depraved immigration policy? We just had a flashpoint. 22 members of the clergy, led by Minister Michael Wolfe of the Lake Street Church of Evanston, who were just arrested in Evanston, Illinois, protesting in front of the Broadview ICE Detention Center, peacefully protesting. They had already had the protection of federal judge Sarah Ellis's order not to attack the clergy, not to throw them to the ground, not to hit them with pepper ball and tear gas and flashbang grenades and the rest. And yet there they are on the ground. Michael Wolfe under the strain of law enforcement of throwing this minister to the ground. And at the same time, in the same place, we have a federal judge who is responsible in Illinois as well, Judge Jeffrey Cummings, who's determined that the Trump administration has violated a consent order going back to 2022 about how ICE and Homeland Security can detain people, how they can arrest people, how they can do it without a warrant. And there's been violations of it. There's more than 313 people that are now being ordered to be released by Judge Cummings because of a violation of a consent decree in a case that we call Castellón-Nava. The Castellón-Nava settlement created a consent decree that the government was bound by, regardless of who's running the government. And when the American Civil Liberties Union ran into court to convince Judge Cummings that the Castellón-Nava consent decree had been violated, he ordered the release of at least 13 people by today and another 600 people around the country that be released for violating their civil liberties in the way that they were arrested during Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago. And this all comes on the heels of, we're here on Sunday, good day to talk about it. This all comes on the heels of Pope Leo, born in Chicago, the first American pope, reaching out and talking to the people that follow him and the leaders in his community and saying there needs to be deep reflection here in the United States about how migrants are being treated. I'm Michael Popok. You're here on Sunday. It is Legal AF. Let's get down to the breaking news around this issue. We are waiting for the United States Supreme Court any moment now to rule about how the military, the National Guard, was deployed by Donald Trump in Illinois. There's a block of that by the Seventh Circuit, and the Supreme Court wanted further briefing, which they now have, about whether, under the statute that Donald Trump used, Section 12406, whether Donald Trump could use the militia, the state National Guard, commandeer it and deploy it without first using the regular armed forces, without first using security forces, federal style, before he went for the backup of violating the 10th Amendment and state sovereignty and forcing National Guards people to go against their own citizens on domestic soil. We're waiting for that issue. In the meantime, judges on the ground like Judge Perry in Chicago, Judge Cummings in Chicago, Judge Ellis in Chicago are fighting the good fight. But look who's on the front lines. Look at what's happening to the clergy. Look what's happening to these more than 24 members who decided they're going to protest, heeding the call of Pope Leo. Let me play the clip from Pope Leo that got us where we are today, calling the clarion call that the morality of the immigration policy is at risk. Let's play the clip.
We asked, how did you receive the foreigner? Did you receive him and welcome him or not? And I think that there's a deep reflection that needs to be made in terms of what's happening. Many people who've lived for years and years and years, never causing problems, have been deeply affected by what's going on right now.
The Trump administration doesn't care about these things. You got Tom Homan, who's alleged to have taken a bribe for $50,000 that he never returned during a sting operation, as still sitting in there as the head of Homeland Security. And he's defending all of the abuse of power that Judge Ellis stopped by way of her preliminary injunction in the last week. That's now up at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals to determine whether Judge Ellis is right or wrong. All she said was, you have to abide by the Constitution. You can't abuse and violate the Fourth Amendment rights. You can't violate civil rights. You can't use weapons of war for riot control without warning. And this is what happens at this ground zero moment for our democracy being fought in the streets of Chicago by nonviolent First Amendment protesters and members of the clergy. Let me play you a clip of Tom Homan and his reaction to being held back by courts who are requiring him and his federal ICE agents and Homeland Security agents to abide by the Constitution. Let's play the Tom Homan clip.
So according to them, the message we should send to the whole world is that if you cross the border illegally, which is a crime, don't worry about it. If you get ordered removed by a federal judge after due process, don't worry about it, because there shouldn't be mass deportations. If that's the message we send to the whole world, people are still going to put themselves in harm's way to come to the greatest nation on earth. They're going to spend their life savings to give it to a criminal cartel. And we saw during the Biden administration, when there was no immigration enforcement, over 4,000 aliens died making that journey, historic record. 250,000 Americans died from fentanyl, historic record. Secure borders saves lives. I wish the Catholic Church would understand that. We have the right to secure our borders like they have the right to secure their facility. You know, you can't enter their facility without getting arrested. Matter of fact, the penalties for entering their facilities are much worse than ours.
Now, where is this going? Okay, the clergy are going to get represented, I'm sure, by the American Civil Liberties Union or other religious organizations that'll come to their rescue. It's right what they did. We need the courage and the crowds in the streets to bring this administration to its knees. And we need to report on it and talk about it in an honest way here on Legal AF. Now, we're learning more than we ever did about the prior abuses of Homeland Security and ICE. I mean, the Castagnol-Nava settlement from 2022 was during the Biden administration. I'm not here to say the Biden administration covered themselves in glory. They did things wrong as well when it came to immigration. But that is the consent decree. And that is what Judge Cummings, and I'll post this on Legal AF Substack, that is what Judge Cummings has just said in the last day about the violations of that order and his ordered release of thousands of people who were improperly in violation of the consent decree. See, were arrested and detained. A consent decree, for a quick teachable moment, is when there is a lawsuit, usually a civil rights or some other lawsuit, brought by an organization like the American Civil Liberties Union. And they have a settlement that is approved by a federal judge rather than continue to have the judge make the ruling. And it becomes a consent decree because the other side, the government, agrees to it. That's the consent part. The decree part is the judge adopts it as an order and it is enforceable as an order of the court. And when you violate it, or when there is a violation, or in this case, thousands of violations of it, you run back to the judge who supervises the settlement. In this case, now Judge Cummings, who determines whether there's been violations and what the remedy is going to be. That's what we just watched. I think it's important. People know I'm not Catholic, but I think it's important when spiritual leaders that tens or hundreds of millions of people follow, like the Pope, speak out for justice. Speak out for those underprivileged. Speak out for those who can't defend themselves. We've foolishly for years relied on the United States Supreme Court to protect the underprivileged, to protect the disadvantaged in our society. That's not where we need to look any longer. We can't look there any longer. 50 years of Republican control of the United States Supreme Court tells us that. The MAGA 6 on the United States Supreme Court tell us that. So we have to look elsewhere. We have to look to the public interest groups. We have to look to the attorneys general of the United States in blue states. We have to look to the clergy, regardless of religious denomination. Now is not the time to separate church and state. Now is the time for church to comment on state. And we will then use that as further ammunition to bring this administration, this lawless, rogue, depraved, immoral administration to heel. And we'll do it together. I'm glad you're here on Sunday morning to talk about these important issues. Take a moment, figure out if you're already a subscriber to Legal AF. If you're not, hit the button That'll help us cross over the 1 million subscriber barrier ceiling over the next month or less at the rate we're going. I think we're going to hit 950,000 this weekend. And that's your vote for the content you have here that we provide you, our First Amendment expression to protect yours. This helps with the 12 different commentators that we have, the different playlists that we have, the different groups like the American Civil Liberties Union and Democracy Forward and others that are here regularly, and the attorneys general talking about their cases and why it's so important, these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases, but no more important than the thousands of people and the clergy and others and First Amendment protesters and veterans and immigrants and migrants and people who support them and women hitting the streets in protest, at big marches, at small marches. It matters. It matters to our audience. It matters to us. We support you. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok.
I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.